Aloha! Welcome to 3 Levels of Enlightenment, sponsored by the United Galactic Federation of Planets. My name is Merlin, and I'm your tour guide. This is our program UGFP 4.29, and it's entitled A Message to My Grandchildren. Now, originally, I was going to continue with a series that we started 2 shows back called Pieces of the Puzzle. And in those programs, we talked about the islands of Hawaii that looked like a triceratops in the earlier programs, and also how here in Tucson, our mountain, Tucson Mountain, looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, a T-Rex. And in those 2 shows, we also talked about the Great Pyramid of Egypt and the other pyramids along the Nile that represented the constellation of Orion and the Pleiades, as well as the Nile River representing the Milky Way. And we talked about Commander Valiant Thor and his book entitled Outwitting Tomorrow. Well, I had planned to continue along the same line with this 3rd program of Pieces of the Puzzle, but something happened this week that I decided needed to be dealt with now. I'm very fortunate that I have 4 children by my first marriage, and I have 6 grandchildren as well by my 4 kids. And one of my grandsons made a comment to my mother, to his great-grandmother, that he has seen my videos on YouTube and was disappointed that his mother and he were not in the credits at the end of the video. I need to explain why. And in the process, I felt maybe I should include everybody in this explanation, not just my one grandson, but all of my grandchildren and those of you in my audience as well. So let's take a look at what I've got to say. This is a message to my grandchildren, and it involves 3 main subjects. The first one is, everyone is entitled to their own beliefs. The second is, history repeats itself. And the last one is, honor those who honor you. The first subject is, everyone is entitled to their own beliefs. Now, since I'm talking to all of my grandchildren and to an audience as well, I could refer to all of you as a group, but let's refer to Jerry, my grandson, who brought up the subject. Jerry, you're old enough now where you should start having your own beliefs. You're at a stage where you need to decide what you want to believe in this lifetime. And the wonderful thing about our world today is that you can have your own beliefs. If you want to believe in God or in no God, it's okay. It's your call, your decision. And in the process, you must also respect other people's beliefs as well. So if you have friends that have a belief different than yours, you have to let them have that. Everyone is entitled to their own belief. And it's good to have beliefs. It's good to have something besides just yourself. It's nice to know that maybe there's a greater being who cares for not only you, but for all the other people and the animals and this planet, that there's something much bigger than just humans. But that's up to you. It's your choice. You're entitled to your own belief. The second part has to do with history repeating itself. Now, I'd like to introduce you to 3 verses, and these come from a very famous book. They come from the Bible. And in these 3 verses, it talks about a very famous person 2,000 years ago who had some problems with the folks back home And essentially, in each of these verses, he repeats the same basic concept. He says, a prophet is honored by all except his own kin. Well, let's see what that means. Now, down on the left side, lower left side of this card, you can see those 3 verses, and they come from 3 of the 4 Gospels of the Bible. Now, those of you folks that watch my programs, those of you in the audience, know that I do not talk about God at level 1. Level 1 is not meant to offend anyone, and in this case, we're going to use the Bible as a reference. I'm not preaching, I'm just showing some historical precedents from the past, so please do not be offended if I use the Bible. Once again, everyone's entitled to use their own source material. So let's take a look. That first verse comes from the book of Matthew, and it's found in chapter 13, verse 57. But let's start a few verses before that. Now, Jerry, I don't know if you've had any exposure to the Bible at this point. I hope that maybe you've had some of the stories read to you. And my other grandchildren, I hope you've had them read to you as well. But this will give you a quick introduction, let's say, to some of these stories. Now, in this book, anything that Jesus says is written in red, and the story begins at verse 54. It says, "And when he was come into his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, insomuch that they were astonished, and said, Whence hath this man this wisdom, and these mighty words? Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brethren James and Joe, and Simon and Judas? And his sisters, are they not all with us? Whence then hath this man all these things? And they were offended in him. But Jesus said unto them, A prophet is not without honor, save in his own country and in his own house." What Jesus is saying is that a prophet is honored by all except his own kin. Now let's continue on to the next verse in Mark chapter 6, verse 4. Now realize that these Gospels are the accounts of his disciples, the men that followed him, and oftentimes the stories overlap or are the same. So as we go to Mark, we hear pretty much the same thing. In Mark it says, "And he went out from thence, and came unto his own country, and his disciples follow him. And when the Sabbath day has come, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many hearing him were astonished, saying, From whence hath this man these things? And what wisdom is this which is given unto him, that even such mighty works are wrought by his hands? Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph, and of Judah and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us?" And they were offended by him. But Jesus said unto them, "A prophet is not without honor, but in his own country, and among his own kin, and in his own house." Now, understand, that's a double negative. What we can do is take a double negative and make it a positive by just dropping the negative parts. So in a sense, this is a prophet is not without honor. If we drop the not and the without and reword the sentence to be more clear, it would read, "A prophet is honored by all but his own kin." Luke is more descriptive in the way he tells the story of Jesus in Nazareth. Let's read this once more from the beginning of the story. Up here on verse 16, Jesus teaches in Nazareth. It says, "And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and stood up for to read. And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. And he hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. And he closed the book, and he gave it again to the minister, and sat down. And the eyes of all them that were in the synagogue were fastened on him. And he began to say unto them, This day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears. And all bare him witness, and wondered at the gracious words which proceeded out of his mouth. And they said, Is not this Joseph's son? And he said unto them, Ye will surely say unto me this proverb, Physician, heal thyself. Whatsoever we have heard done in Capernaum, do also here in thy country. And he said, And verily I say unto you, no prophet is accepted in his own country. But I tell you of a truth, many widows were in Israel in the days of Elijah, when the heaven was shut up 3 years and 6 months, when great famine was throughout all the land. But unto none of them was Elijah sent, save unto Sarepta, a city of Sidon, unto a woman that was a widow. And many lepers were in Israel in the time of Elijah the prophet, and none of them was cleansed, saving Naaman the Syrian. And all they in the, let me turn the page, and all they in the synagogue, when they heard these words, were filled with wrath. Wrath means they were angry. They were very upset. Jesus had said something that really upset them. And rose up and thrust him out of the city, and led him unto the brow of the hill whereon their city was built, that they might cast him down headlong. They wanted to throw him off a cliff. They were going to throw him headfirst off a cliff, headlong. But he, passing through the midst of them, went his way. Okay, now that in itself is a story. Somehow Jesus was able to escape this group of his kin who wanted to kill him. They had taken him from the synagogue out to the edge of a cliff, and they were going to throw him to the bottom of the cliff and kill him. And somehow he disappeared in their midst. Now there's many versions of how he might have done that. We're going to have a version later on in another program which will explain where Jesus was during those 18 lost years. And it has to do with Hawaii and some of the things that Hawaiians can do that maybe Jesus learned and did himself. But the point of all this is that 3 times in 3 of the Gospels, these books are called the Gospels, there are 3 of the 4 books, it's repeated over and over that Jesus is honored by all except his own kin. And it's something that you might call genetically predisposed. In other words, the kin of anyone that is going to be a prophet, who's going to make predictions about things to come, the kin of that person, the family and friends, can't believe it. It's just too hard for them to swallow. That person was just the carpenter's son. How can he have been given any special knowledge? So it's a predisposed opinion. People that are close to the person that's making prophecy are going to disavow whatever that person says. They will not believe it. And that's their right. As we said in the first part of this, everyone is entitled to their own beliefs. So people that don't want to believe are allowed to do that. It's okay to not believe, whereas others may decide they want to believe. Well, that brings us back to our original list. If you remember, in this original list, I talked about honor those who honor you. Now, essentially, if someone believes in what you're saying or doesn't really care either way, then it's okay. They can choose to believe or not to believe. But if they do not honor you, if they feel that what you're saying is blasphemy or demonic, then that's another story. Unfortunately for me, my 4 children do not believe in what my wife Moana and I are doing, what your grandmother and I are doing. And for the last 14 years, they have basically opposed our mission. Well, that essentially means they don't honor us. They're, like it says on this card, a prophet is honored by all except his own kin. Well, I'm not honored by my kin. And this third item on the list is that you honor those who honor you, but you don't honor those that don't honor you. Now, Jerry's question was, why isn't his mom listed in the credits of my shows? And not only his mom, but his aunt, my daughter's sister, my daughter, and my 2 sons, his 2 uncles. Well, my 4 kids do not believe in what we're doing. That we're not honored by them. And if they don't honor what we're doing, then we can't honor them in return. So, Jerry, the reason your mom is not listed in the credits is because she doesn't honor what your grandmother and I are doing. And that holds true for everyone. If people do not believe in what you're doing, don't recognize them. Don't honor them. You're right when you question why your grandmother's children are listed in the credits. My wife's 6 children are part of the credits. And it's because they have not taken a position against what we're doing. What I mean by taking a position is that at one point, Jerry, one of your uncles, felt that I should be committed to an insane asylum and put on a very powerful drug to get all these thoughts out of my head that I've been receiving. Well, I've never heard that from your grandmother Moana's side of the family. So in their case, they're listed in the credits. They, you might say, honor us. Now, you'll also notice that I have not listed the grandchildren from your grandmother's side. But I want you to know that we love all of you grandchildren. Just for the sake of fairness, I would like to list all of my grandchildren, even if my own children do not believe in what I'm doing. So, let's do it. Jerry, you are my daughter's son, and Chase is my other daughter's son, and then Tyler, Kylie, Emmy, and Sophie are the 4 children of my youngest son. And then on Moana's side of the family, Kimo has 2 children. Our grandchildren on his side are Loki and Keanu. And then Elizabeth has a granddaughter for us, who's Brandy. Berta has 4 children who are our grandchildren. They are Jesse, Jackie, Manja, and Bubba. Gerald has 3 children in his family that are our grandchildren. And they are Joseph, Inoka, and Te Amo. And finally, Donald has blessed us with 6 grandchildren, and their names are Camille, Dakota, Dylan, Chasden, Shia, and Kaipo. So your grandmother and I are very, very lucky and fortunate to have 22 beautiful grandchildren. We love you all. And unfortunately, your names weren't listed earlier, but they are now. And the day may come when I can put your mom and your aunt and your uncles in the credits to list them as honorees, you might say. So just to review, let's go back and look at this list one more time of what grandchildren need to know. The first is that everyone is entitled to their own beliefs, which I strongly believe in. We should all be allowed to worship and pray to whoever we believe in. The second one is that history repeats itself. Well, we saw how Jesus was nearly thrown off a cliff because he dared to have a different idea than what his kin had in the town of Nazareth, and he upset them greatly, and they wanted to do him in. Well, that's kind of happened again in my world, because my own children feel that what I'm doing may be demonic, and they just cannot believe it. And then lastly, you are to honor those who honor you. So if people believe in what you're doing, then respect them as well. It's always good to have, you might say, followers, or to have people that are supportive of what you're doing. It helps a lot. And lastly, it's important to know that family is the most important thing in life. We're blessed when we have children. We're even more blessed when we have grandchildren. And you always want to stay on good terms with all of those in your family, especially in difficult times, which may be approaching. And even if you can't agree on certain things, you can still do something that was sung about in a famous movie from a long time ago. Now, you're probably too young to remember. You may not have even heard of this movie, but it was something that I thoroughly enjoyed back in the 60s when it first came out. It's a musical, and the name of it is Camelot. And in the movie Camelot, as you can see by the top left corner of this card, it says, simply love them. This was from a song that was sung by King Arthur. And he's trying to understand why he can't get along with women, why he's having so much difficulty with his queen, Guinevere, and he falls back on a very famous bit of advice from a wise old man. In fact, the wise old man actually has my name. The wise old man's name was Merlin, and the theme was, you must simply love them. When it comes to family, even if you don't agree with them, still love them. Simply love them. And it was a beautiful song. It actually started out, how to handle a woman. Can't remember the rest. But if you're interested, find the DVD of Camelot and listen to that song. It's got a great bit of advice in it. So Jerry, I hope that helps to explain why your mom wasn't listed and why you weren't listed. But I have now acknowledged you, recognized you, and your other cousins who are my grandchildren and your grandmother's grandchildren. So hope that helps to explain. Otherwise, we'll continue on with pieces of the puzzle in our next program to take us to a very important place that we need to go. A discovery has been made, and the world needs to know about it. So I hope not only you, Jerry, watch more of these videos, but I hope all my grandchildren will watch some and maybe take something out of them. So at this point, I'd like to say aloha, ahui ho, and mahalo for watching. Until next time.